If you're using Claude Code by just typing in prompts as though it's another ChatGPT, you're missing 90% of its value. Claude Code comes off deceptively as just another lightweight command line tool. But really, under the hood, it's much more than that. It's the first in the coming wave of highly powered AI agents. Understanding how to harness that power is critical, and I think what might be holding you back from being fully blown away by Claude Code's capabilities. My name is Patrick, a CTO and co-founder of an AI native startup who's been using Claude Code since February. Earlier this week, I spoke to a group of founders in Seattle alongside my friends Anand and Galen about the core principles to employ and the tactical frameworks and tools to get the most out of Claude Code. We will cover a range of what we feel are the most valuable topics, including using MCPs to give eyes to Claude Code, using the double escape method and resume method in order to fork Claude Code context and spin up multiple instances. One of my favorites and extremely helpful automated code review, a quick state of the union of the top code gen tools, including Codex and others, the My Developer prompting trick that Galen demos towards the end of the talk. That was actually one of my biggest takeaways. How we structure validation steps to ensure Claude knows what is good and what is bad output, and many others. In the description, I've greatly detailed each section and the topics that we spoke through. So if you're already familiar with the topic, I'd highly recommend just skipping through to what's interesting and relevant, as there's a lot of good gems in there, in my unbiased opinion. And I've also linked the slides from all three of our talks, so you can reference that. I hope this helps you unlock the next level out of Claude Code. And with that, here's Anand to kick us off.
This is the main question that I get asked quite a lot. What's the difference between Claude Code and Cursor? I think it sums up to this. Claude Code is really good at multi-step processing. So you have a large task you want to get done, it can break it down into subtasks, execute them one by one. I use it for starting projects constantly. I post new project like every other couple of days. It's just because I'm able to create a really good spec, really good planning document, which I'll get into later, give it to Claude Code, and I just let Claude Code run freely, which is probably not great to do, but there's no stakes to like these random side projects, and it's really good at doing that. And it's again because of that reflective loop. If there's a lot of complexity, this is what I mentioned just a minute before, where you have to pull in a lot of things from different files, it's good at doing that as well. And if you have a very long running process, I tend to prefer Claude Code. Cursor is still really good though at solving specific problems, addressing very specific files or lines of code, because you can select those things very easily. Let's go into the Claude.md file. So this file is your main context file. So when you run /init, and we'll get into what that means in a sec, it will generate an overview of your code base. It'll go through all your files, figure out how everything is set up, make detailed notes about the startup processes, where everything is located. And I like the quote from the documentation, which is that your Claude.md files become a part of Claude's prompts. I mean, that's what literally happens. So they should be refined like any frequently used prompt. So effectively, you have to think of it like a README specifically built for Claude Code. The init function is great, but I have my own set of commands that I run, where I ask it to go through every file and first of all extract the file structure and the folder structure. Then for each of those folders, I have a new Claude.md file. So in each subfolder, I have a Claude.md file. And effectively, you can create detailed notes for every single detailed readmes, for every single subfolder, to the point where you can track every single function and file. And then when Claude needs to do an operation, it's no longer grepping like crazy. You can have it just look at those Claude.md files. As long as they're updated, it will drastically reduce, how much cognitive load it's taking on. Yeah.
So the Claude.md file, is it more like a README, or is it more like the Cursor, rules file? Like how do I?
It's kind of a mix. It's more like it's like Cursor rules are effectively prompts that go into Cursor, right? So but it's also a README of your entire code base, so it can act as both. But here's a good example of what I have in my actual Claude.md files, right? So this is like the main. I have a back end and a front end. So I said, okay, here's how it's set up. I have my front end has this kind of setup, my back end has this kind of setup, and I have it cover the front end structure, which actually then also has a much more detailed list in the front end folder itself. Then I have my back end structure, which is in the back end folder, but in more detail. But I can extract those up into my project folder or company folder. So it's easy for me to also see it, but also easy for if I have to run things cross code base or cross repo, it's a lot easier to manage that. And some other MD files that are not as talked about, I feel, but are very useful are things like the changelog. If you have a good changelog, it's easy for Claude to, over time, realize what were the changes that were made and why. So every time you make a change, just ask it to update the changelog separately from the Claude.md file. And that just gives it a good understanding of, okay, here's why I changed it, and here's why we shouldn't go back to doing this. I use a plan.md file for every new project that I start or every new task that I start. It's effectively the list of things that I actually want to get done in a single document. All right, now here's the one major thing that I want to touch upon that I think is really interesting. You can attach Claude Code into your GitHub repo. This basically replaces, well, effectively it is Devin, but using your Anthropic key. It's super easy to set up. You just run this command. They automate everything for you. It's really, there is no hassle. And then you can go in and create an issue. Like I had some project I wanted to do. So I was like, all right, create this component for the library, and I tag Claude, like I would tag some developer. And it goes in, it creates the issue, it creates this to-do list, this checklist, executes that. And later, when I actually am like, hey, this was like not that great, I can just tag it again in the PR like I would with an actual developer, and it'll go through and do that again. I can do way more things using this process than I can just on my own computer running one agent or even multiple agents at the same time. It's extremely convenient. It also has, Claude Code has built-in commands like review, PR comments that allow you to effectively automate the review process from your console, fetching the comments so that it can then operate in your local environment. These commands are built in. I would really recommend exploring them. And I could just run 30 different commands at the same time. I use Claude Code to say, here's a list of all the features I want to build, generate PRs for every single one of these, and make sure you tag Claude at the end of it so that it will spin off the job. And it was able to do that. This is in my phone. Like by the time I got home, it was all complete. It was just amazing.
This you did with the integration with GitHub or just
yes.
on the CLI?
No, from the CLI you can integrate it into GitHub. Yeah, so it's effectively an app that's running there, but it is the Claude Code bot. And now we'll get to commands. This is what a command is. A command is just a prompt. It's just a prompt that you can save in a file, share amongst projects, share amongst your team. You can develop these like very comprehensive step-by-step things, and you can actually run it just like you would the PR, the install GitHub that were built in from Claude. You can write your own. And why this is great is because you might have specific things you want your team to know, or somebody on your team is just a Claude expert or an AI prompt expert. They write something amazing, you can now share that with the entire team. It's super easy to use. You should really look into using commands which allow you to create these comprehensive workflows just using a prompt that Claude can then easily follow. This is, for example, the code-based analyze prompt that I can use to set up my really, really comprehensive analysis in a Claude.md file. And you can see like it's super long, but it works. I even made a GitHub action that can then be run, right from your GitHub interface. And this is just all the commands that I've collected. Anyway, here's the website and QR code if you're interested. I've just made it really easy to add this. Disclaimer is that I made this, but I really do believe it's a really good way to share those ideas. You can also launch sub-agents. If you're just starting off with Claude Code, don't even think about this, but just like you can basically run two things at the same time. It's pretty cool.
So the analyzer command was the command you were talking about to generate the Claude.md files.
That's one I use to make a more comprehensive Claude.md file. It can just be to analyze the code base in general.
Hey everybody, my name is Patrick. I have been using Claude Code since it came out back in February 24th, which feels like forever ago. But it's been amazing to see just the constant evolution of new features. One of the coolest things I feel like with Claude Code is how the Anthropic team very obviously works closely together on the ML and AI side. So the actual machine learning researchers that are doing the post-training and the fine-tuning and everything, along with the actual product team. So you see this close coupling with Claude Code that I think really sets it apart from any other experience. I was just listening to the Klein founders on the Latent Space podcast. Excellent recommendation, by the way, that podcast episode and just the podcast overall. And they were talking about how Opus 4 and Sonnet 4 just so badly want to use bash commands to grep around, as Anand was speaking to. So there's a whole realm of preferred bits of what Opus 4 and Sonnet 4 try to do that fit really, really well with Claude Code, given that the application and machine learning teams are speaking closely together. So that's one reason why Claude Code is fantastic to use. But I'll speak a little bit to the fundamentals of Claude Code. So what makes this more exciting and interesting, and like thus all the hype recently over a Cursor or other platform? From my perspective, the biggest pieces here are we're doing much more than just code gen. We're really working with one of the first in production like agentic tools that can do multi-step processing on the order of roughly an hour or so. You can think a lot broader than just code gen in terms of applications for this, which I'll get to a few of my favorite non-coding workflows in a second here. But I think just feeling the character, the nature, what helps these agents run for longer and to get more accurate towards what we're actually trying to execute with them. All of these factors are really, really helpful lessons for us to be learning and internalizing now as we're building agentic workflows in other domains, in our own products, or using tools such as Gemini to summarize YouTube videos or whatever other workflows we might have. So that's one amazing part of Claude Code. Claude is also fine-tuned for, as I mentioned, tools that Claude Code takes great advantage of. So you've got the bash type commands, so being able to grep your code base and use the GH or GitHub CLI tool. But we also have the native tooling, so web search, file search. One of my favorite bits is this to-do list. Back in the day, I'd always create these PRDs, which is still a helpful workflow. But for most things, I can just defer to Claude Code, doing the shift tab to get it into planning mode, think through and iterate on the spec of what we're trying to accomplish, and then allow it to create a little to-do list to kind of keep it on track, especially when it's handing off between different steps and using sub-agents to summarize different parts of the code base or think through and do research. Being able to pull that back and keep grounded in a to-do list, even its little like 6-bullet to-do list, is super, super helpful. A few other tools, such as its ability to reflect on what it's outputting, is an absolute game changer. I see this happen quite a bit where it'll work through something and be like, wait a second, this actually isn't the best approach to this, or this assumption was mistaken. And that ability, as you can imagine, when you're trying to let it run on a task and come back in 15 minutes or whatever to verify the output, is super helpful. It's just one less touch point, and usually multiple less touch points that you're having to go in and babysit the model for, in addition to the output just being much better with that reflection piece. So there's a number of reasons why that pairing of Opus 4 specifically, but Sonnet 4 as well, with Claude Code is a really incredible and productive workflow. One note too, when you're using Claude Code, if you run /model, you can choose Sonnet versus Opus. So just in case you're not aware of that, the default is Sonnet. Opus is 4 times more expensive, but if you're on the max plan, it's which is a $100 or $200 a month plan, which I'd highly recommend. The amount of inference we get is ridiculous. I mean, I would estimate if I'm fully using Claude in a month, it's in the order of $3 to $5K in terms of like API costs, but it's $200 a month flat. So I don't know how long this is going to be around, or if they're going to try to water it down like Cursor or others. So I wanted to mention the different types of agents to just give a quick overview. We've got, of course, chat-based agents, which we're all familiar with, ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. We also have these CLI and IDE-based agents. Claude Code, of course, being an example, Cursor, Windsurf, the brand new Kiro from AWS or Amazon, Klein, etc. And then we have background agents, which are just starting to kind of roll out over the last couple of months. So Codex, which also has a CLI tool, but of course they've got, with OpenAI's Pro plan at least, you can kick off agentic processes that will run anywhere from 1 to 4 different instances of O3. And then I would also loop the GitHub integration, which I won't belabor since Anand talked about it, but it's incredible. One of our friends, Sam, just walked me through this absolutely mind-blowing workflow that he's got. He basically took the integration that you can build with Claude Code with GitHub, and then he modified the YAML file, because basically what it's doing is it's just creating a YAML file that's a GitHub action configuration file, and then you can add additional details. So you can modify the prompt that it's running. You can, I would highly recommend uncomment the model it uses so that you can use Opus instead of Sonnet the default, which is, it's in there as a default, you just have to uncomment it. With this, you can add additional parameters, for example, basically sneaking MCPs into your config file, and also give it permission to use different bash tooling, and then give it access to other configuration files like markdown files. So all this to say,
just through that GitHub integration, there's a lot you can really squeeze out of it to essentially create, as Anand was saying, a Devon type experience, but with much more control and with better models. What's also so cool about this is, as Anand was saying, you can embed any process that you have internally around like amazing ways to go about code review. And also based on the user that's submitting the PR, you can you could change things up as well. So you could really get these parts of your workflow embodied within these commands or these runners. And that's one thing I love about Claude Code and also MCPs is being able to encapsulate these different workflows that we have internally, which even just as one dev, it's helpful, but across the team, incredibly helpful to embody that, that knowledge and that ability to be super productive and hand that off to less junior folks that don't have to understand all the underlying details. So we have background agents, again, GitHub integration being what I would consider part of that. And then kind of connected, but separately a little bit more advanced, is our agent swarms. These are really cool. It's basically spinning off a bunch of containers. Codex is essentially this, where you can go from 1 to 4. If you have 4 of them running at the same time, you've got all these agents running, and then they're coming up with a solution. And then you can compare either manually or through LLM as judge. My friend Sam was walking me through this workflow, as I was mentioning, where he's got 3 Opus instances that kick off. And then they've got acceptance criteria that they can look at for what good code looks like, different style guides, examples of like API documentation and API spec standards. And it will compare outputs against that. And an LLM will choose which version of those 3 outputs it likes the best, and then we'll automatically merge that in, build a CI/CD pipeline, and then he can review it at that point. So you can get pretty sophisticated with the swarm idea. That's a more basic version. And then at the AI Engineer World's Fair that a few of us went to down in SF about a month ago, we saw examples of, hundreds of these containers, being kicked off. Now, of course, that's would bankrupt me with Opus 4, but it's exciting to think about. And then, of course, non-engineering agents as well, such as Manus and Deep Research and others we're familiar with. My favorite, Claude Code in the CLI and also in headless mode. They've got an SDK for TypeScript, Python, and then, of course, just in the CLI as well. You've got this little intelligence that you can pipe things into in your terminal. You can put it in your build pipeline. You can have it review and build all kinds of different stuff that's like right where you're at or within your application. And I think kind of thinking about Claude Code not as just a code gen tool, but as this agent that you can deploy in a bunch of different contexts is really powerful. I also love Gemini CLI. Very similar to Claude Code, doesn't have the magic, but for other tasks, one of the coolest ones I found was somebody using Gemini to basically watch a YouTube video, which they can see 1 frame a second, and they have, of course, the transcript as well through Google's first-party integration with their YouTube tool. I do this all the time. Even before I watch like an hour talk, I'll just summarize it, gemini.google.com, and we'll basically get a sense of what it's talking about. Or if like for this talk, there's one detail I remembered from a Claude talk, but I didn't want to go through the entire hour to try to find it. I just quickly asked, like, hey, I remember this point, like roughly speaking, where is the time code for this? And it pulled it up. Super helpful. And this is just one workflow with YouTube, but super helpful. Another cool one, though, is with the Gemini CLI. You can take a tutorial and then have it try to execute and build that locally on your computer if it's something that would be doable from like a command line or using different tooling that you're exposed to it. So very versatile. Okay, so what agents need for great performance? Context. Context is everything. Context truly is everything. As you guys probably know, prompt engineering just got rebranded to context engineering, given that what we fit into the model, what we give them, the analogy I pulled from, I believe it was the Anthropic CPO, who's also the Instagram founder, but the way he was talking about it is, imagine you're Claude Code, you wake up, you're in this box, and all you have is what some person just handed you, i.e. the prompt. It's going to be extremely hard to do anything productive with that if you've got limited context, limited tooling. So giving the context of the code base, architectural style, what our preferred libraries are, different like UI mocks and style guides. Anything that can help it understand like examples of good output and bad output, what it needs to do, along with evals or ways to evaluate the output. So again, examples of good and bad. Linters are super helpful. I just have it run ESLint every time it's doing anything because that just saves me a ton of time. You just want to keep that agentic loop going as long as you can and give it as much feedback in real time as possible. Any standards, so around commits and branch naming, for example, acceptance criteria, automated tests, and then also tools. So different MCPs are the easiest way to expose these. but also the built-in web search and Bash, GitHub CLI. There's a lot of other tools you can give these models to perform and do much better. There's a lot beyond engineering too that these agents are great at. Second Brain, which is basically like a methodology around personal knowledge management in like note-taking, which can be really helpful along with different computer administrative tasks. So like naming screenshots based off of the content and what's in there, organizing files automatically, of course, pipe operator. There's a MCP for Blender, which is really fun to create 3D models. I haven't used it myself, but I've seen some amazing demos. Getting close to time, so I'll just really quickly go through the rest of the slides here. Different types of MCPs that can be really helpful. These are the main categories of functionally the type of MCP. These are some of the best registries of MCPs where you can find them.
There's like behaviors with React that are terrible for users that end up happening when you kind of just throw a lot of code together.
Yeah.
And fixing it is hard. And I figured there's some way to do it if you have some MCP that's going to load it and then kind of output, the progress to some format that can be read by an LLM, but I don't know what that is yet.
I don't have a good solution to this. One thought though is maybe having it input breakpoints to get it to kind of pause at different UI states and then take a screenshot is maybe one interesting approach just to throw out there, but it's a great question. All right, I'm out of time, unfortunately. I'll share these slides though. There's a lot of stuff in here that I'm really passionate about, but I want to make sure we have time here.
So big picture, I can't believe we didn't cover this yet. This is what you want to do every time you are using Claude Code on the command line. How many of you actually use Claude Code, have used it? You've all used it. Okay, so you know this. So hopefully I'll give you something a little more interesting. But explore, plan, execute. If you jump straight to execute, I do this sometimes. I'm like, this is going to be so easy. Claude is dumb and it will screw it up. I actually find that Sonnet 4 with thinking hard is better than Opus for a lot of tasks, and it's faster. But your task complexity may be different than mine. So my goal is to make Claude spend tokens to build up context. You can read the markdown file. Mine's never up to date. Or it reads it and it starts, imagine you read 300 lines about like how someone's code base works and they're like, now build this. You're gonna mess something up. So prepare to work on this. Claude starts with an idea of what it's gonna work on and it's like, okay, it's just like you, like all of you. You're like, okay, you start reading and then you're like, okay, I know how to build this. And you stop reading and you're like, I'm ready to build. If you're like, read the code, it will read a little bit more. But if you're like, prepare to discuss how our front end works, Claude will spend 50,000 tokens over 7 minutes just being like, okay. And then it'll give you a nice overview of how it works. And when you do that, Claude is much smarter. And if the overview is wrong, escape, or /clear, start over. Don't try to correct, you can try to correct it, I do it sometimes it works. But you're just basically chewing through tokens in your context window, trying to push back on somebody on a bad contractor. Just fire the contractor, get a new one.
If it is wrong, what else do you put in there to make it right the second time? You just like rerun it and see if it...
Just rerun it. It's gonna reuse a bunch of sub-agents, it's gonna get it right. It's gonna be right 9 out of 10 times. Okay. This is a great gambling game. And when you lose, you're not like, oh, why did I lose? You're like, no, I win almost all the time. I make just markdown files. I have Claude write them. So like, talk about how our architecture works and then make a checklist of like, this is what we're working on. This is like an old one, obviously. Don't write any code. This is like, maybe if you have a PR, consider the next one, review, read relevant. But I actually think this is a lot better. We're gonna work on the document identification part of the app, dig in, read relevant files, prepare to discuss the ins and outs of how it works. Sometimes I'll follow up with questions just to make sure it actually has the context. And often I will double escape to remove that from the context if I think it's doing a good job, just because I like a lot of room in the context window. So double escape, how many of you use double escape with Claude? Okay, you should use this all the time. So I just spent 7 minutes building up context. This contractor's really good at this. I can double escape and just fork the conversation. Like I can have it do a bunch of work, double escape and go back to this same point where they have all this context. Saves me money and time. Like mostly I won't get kicked out of my max plans as quickly. And mostly just like, I don't have to sit there and wait and maybe get a bad gamble. If you get a smart Claude, you should keep it and reuse it over and over and over. So this is what it looks like. You double escape and you can just go back to any previous conversation. This is a crazy branching multiverse. So you can open up a new tab. You just built up a bunch of context. Open up a new tab, hit resume, and you get all that context in the new tab in terminal. So you can do like 5 terminals, all with all of that exact amazing front end or back end or API context. You can ask a couple of questions and start there, wherever you want. Just don't do this and then start like having it write 3 different things on the front end. Go.
Do you prefer like Git work trees or just different directories, or how do you go about?
I prefer to not work on more than 2 tasks at a time because my brain gets fried. I end up with 15 tabs open. I go back to a tab, I'm like, wait, what's that tab? And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot make this decision right now. This is like, why did I even start down this path? I just have like 2 work trees, which is just like your entire Git library, like in a parallel case. And I will just like merge them into master. I just keep them open. They're just sitting there because I don't care. I don't use Git appropriately. So plan, I don't use plan mode. The 3 or 4 times I've tried, it like didn't do as good a plan as me asking it to do a plan. I like to think hardest. This is where you really have to think. Claude needs to think hard to plan. So this is my like generic instructions. I really like this. Write the function names in 1 to 3 sentences about what they do. Write the test names 5 to 10 words like about the behavior they cover, but really the short overview. Because Claude's default for plan is often like, here's a bunch of code that I'm gonna write. And you're like, no, I want you to think higher level than that. I want you to tell me conceptually what you're doing. Because when you start doing code like that, you're starting to get into the weeds and you're not thinking architecturally. So this is a different example I have. Like I actually have built up this whole system for adding new PDF types. So I have like a whole system where I like basically take a PDF and I throw it at Gemini. But I have different types and I have different verifications I want to run on them. I just have it read a couple of guides and then I just let this run. So there's no context in this. I can just put this into GitHub and then I go to Claude and I'm like, do GH issue 140, close it when you're done. And then I just hit like auto accept, goodbye. Risk-based planning, if it's small, don't overthink, just write the code. Medium to large, you gotta break it into like testable, deployable PRs. And that's, I think of this in terms of context windows, you know, and that's like about a PR size, for me, it's about a PR sized chunk of work. And then high risk, I think you should take 3 shots at the plan, 2 or 3 shots. You should really work over it like with Claude. I'm not making the plan again. Like I'm just looking at its plan and I'm like, this smells bad. Like this is a terrible, like if an engineer came to me, you are an engineer, you're coming to me with this, like, I'm like, this is really complicated. It's gonna be like, you're gonna screw it up. It's gonna mess up the code base. So once I've done the plan, I open up a new tab, pull up that same amazing context, but don't dive into the plan. Don't get it, like once it's made the plan, it's not gonna critique itself. But if you go back to the amazing context and you're like, yo, my developer came up with this plan to do this. Claude's like, yeah, all right, let me tell you about this plan. I'm with you, I'm on your team, not on your developer's team. If you're like, I came up with this plan, it'll like tell you a lot of nice stuff. It'll be like, great job, you did a great plan. Here's a couple little things you might do differently. But this case, it's gonna be like, yeah, your developer, you know, like, I don't know, I wouldn't have done it that way. And try to get specific. If you're just like, they made this plan, it's like, it's not gonna do a good job. But so ask the questions you would ask yourself. So get feedback on the plan. You can have 2 Claudes make the plan. You can have a 3rd Claude decide between them. I tend to put them into Markdown and have Claude work on them. And then I have it break them up into PR-sized chunks. And then we execute. And those PR-sized chunks, you might as well use that same context that you've already built up because it's so valuable to have those 50,000 tokens about your database, or sorry, your app in the context window. It's gonna write much better code than if you just like bring up a blank Claude with 200 lines of the Claude.md. So pull up that 50,000 token context window, say, work on PR1. This is my example prompt. Think hard, write elegant code that completes this. This is a real big one. It loves backwards compatibility, which I don't. I'm like, no, and it's like, we'll have graceful fallbacks. And I'm like, no, that's just junk that will break. And then it will gracefully fall back. When you say that, that means to me that the app is going to silently fail and I will not know about it because it will just start leaning on some old code that you should be deleting. You can tell where I get frustrated with Claude. So I try to, this is a little overkill, like the testing and sometimes, but I think linting, compiling, and writing corresponding tests is good. For really simple stuff, I actually just say like do TDD. And it writes the test, it writes the failing test, it writes the code that makes the test pass, and it does a great job. It's really good at it. TDD is terrible. When I did code, I remember trying it for like a week and being like, I fucking hate TDD. This is just like, this is worse than writing tests. So I like thinking hard or think for this. I have Claude write lots of scripts to check its own work. So like, I gave it a script to call Gemini with PDFs, or I had it write that script. And now I'm like, test to make sure that like when you verify, like you created a new markdown file that verifies PDFs, make sure it actually works and it verifies with this one. Or if you need to view a PDF file, Claude's terrible at that, it can't do it. Ask Gemini or ask Unstruct. It will give you a markdown file, go, look at that, then you can read it and understand what's going on and you can like figure out what to do. This is a big question, to watch or not to watch. Do you like, because Claude will make, in my case, like 1 out of 10 to 20 times, it's gonna start copying code and just doing some dumb stuff. And I'm not gonna look at the commit. I'm gonna watch it as it goes pretty much, or I'm not gonna watch it at all. I'm gonna be like, commit it, it works, it's good. So I've seen 200 lines of copied code go through. I have a weird config that's in 5 different places in my app, and I'm just like, every time I'm like, Claude, could we just put this config into one place? And it's like, oh yeah, here's a plan. And I'm like, all right, you're stupid, like, this is harder than it looks, I guess. Return true was a 3.7 problem. You will not get that anymore. But usually if you just hit go, like you kind of get a feel for it. I have a feel for it now where I'm like, this is an easy enough thing for Claude just to do, go. Shift, tab, puts it on to autocomplete. I don't know if you all have heard how this came to be, like why we have amazing coding agents now, but it's because of RL, and it's because once you move up the tech tree enough where models can write good compilable code, you can actually then start to give them coding problems and figure out if, like, basically they have to be able to create the solution like 80% of the time, or tasks, like the way that they did thinking was they were just like, write a bunch of stuff, and at the end, if you get the right answer, you get a cookie, and we're gonna reward that circuit. And if you don't get a cookie, right? And if so we got to like GPT-4 and Claude 3.5 level models, and you could start actually like turning thinking on, but because the models were good enough to get all the way through. But the problem is, like, you're creating software engineering problems, and you're just like, and they're verifiable. So like, write this code. Does it compile? Does it answer the right question at the end? Very easy to test back, right? But does that make for good edits? No, that makes for really good writing fresh new codes, new methods. Claude prefers that. I don't know if you've all noticed that, but you're like, in my case, you're probably, if you're editing stuff like cursor style, it doesn't matter. But in my case, I'm like, write this, edit the code, figure out where you can edit, because you really have to prompt that, because Claude is still really tuned into like, okay, I'm gonna write some new code. This is gonna be fun. We're gonna do a new method, guys. Sorry, it got cut off here, but yeah. Claude 3.7 was like over RL'd on just like completing tasks, and they dialed that back. That's where the return true came from. But we still have this problem where Claude is like just trying to finish, like it's trying to finish tasks and get its cookie by writing new code, not by editing or elegantly integrating code. So then I go back to the developer thing, right? I lean on the developer. So I go back to the planner. So I have my planner tab open, and I'm just like, yo, my developer just finished step 2. Give them low-level like feedback and high-level feedback. If you don't say that, it's like, they did a great job. And then I get feedback, and then I go back to the developer, and I'm like, hey, I got this feedback. What do you think? And it's like, well, that's good feedback. Yeah, I'll do it. And this is the problem with like Claude. I don't know if you've hit the /review on Claude's own code. It's like, this code's great. Review doesn't know. Claude likes Claude's code. I use this sometimes, but prepare. So I'm like, at the end, as I'm running out of my context window, or we're finishing up the pull request, like, I say to Claude, like, you're not working on the next step of this, give advice to the next developer, put it in the markdown file. And Claude is usually like, you're off to an excellent start here. But it can be helpful. Context window management. I'm sure, do you all get this? I never compact anymore. Compact is a waste of time. It generates like a page and a half, and it tells Claude to read 4 files, and you're like, you end up with a very like kind of off kilter, dumb Claude. So I just try to rewind. Once I get to 5%, I'm like, document what you've done, and we're rewinding back to 40%, and we're gonna like, and I'm gonna be like, here's what I've done so far. Continue.
Sorry, so you rewind instead of just wiping full clean?
Yeah, I hate compact. And yeah, starting with clear. Yeah, I mean, you could use clear, but then you don't have any context. And so and you can use resume to get that context back or double escape. So like, why not use that? I mean, it is more expensive because you already have all that, like I don't know that you're actually getting charged you only get new tokens, right? So you're not getting charged. It's much more expensive for them. But for us, it's just new tokens, so it's great. So you jump straight to execution. Go ahead. Oh, yeah. Other tips and tricks. I git merge. That's the problem with work trees, is I'm like, all right, we're gonna do this over here, we're gonna do this over here, and then we're merge them, and I'm like, oh, Jesus. Now we have a merge conflict, and I'm just like, Claude, deal with git. And it's like, okay. And it gets it right every time. I'm like, oh, should I like trust it? And I'm like, I don't know. Every time it works. I skip the ceremony for simple tasks, just like do it. Claude loves to be enterprise ready. Just, you have to fight that, because like it's built by an enterprise for enterprises. So, so this is one of my like, if it gave me a plan that's too bulky, I love this, and it's just like totally right, and it cuts it in half, and it makes it a much better plan for me. Explore, plan, execute, resume, my developer. And then Claude made up this joke at the end for me. I didn't add this, but I like it. It's a good one. All right, so that's my talk.
I hope you found our talks helpful. And if you did, I'm sure you would enjoy one of these 2 videos on how to become AI native as a software engineer and a founder, specifically within code gen tools like Claude Code. And with that, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Thank you.